for a 30-minute narration. The story of it. Before I begin, let me ask you, have you ever heard of a ship that people thought could never sink? Imagine standing at a port in 1912, looking at the biggest, most beautiful ship in the world. The Titanic was not just any ship, it was a floating palace, the most advanced and luxurious ship ever built. But as we all know, this grand ship met a terrible end. Let's go back to the beginning.
Building the Titanic!
The Titanic was built in Belfast, Ireland, by a company called Harland and Wolff. It was part of a new group of big ships made by the White Star Line. How big was it? 882 feet long, taller than a 10-story building, and weighing 46,000 tons. It had 9 decks, beautiful staircases, fancy dining rooms, and even a gym, a swimming pool, and Turkish baths. People believed it was unsinkable. Some even said not even God himself could sink this ship. They were so sure of this that they only put 20 lifeboats on board. Not enough for everyone. April 10th, 1912, the Titanic sets sail. On April 10th, 1912, the Titanic left Southampton, England. It stopped in France and Ireland to pick up passengers before heading to New York City. There were 2,200 people on board. In first class, the richest people in the world were travelling in luxury, people like John Jacob Astor IV and Benjamin Guggenheim. In third class, many poor families were hoping to start a new life in America. For the first 4 days, everything was perfect. The sea was calm, people were enjoying the journey, and the Titanic felt like a moving hotel. But everything changed on the night of April 14th, 1912.
The iceberg!
As the Titanic sailed across the Atlantic Ocean, other ships sent warnings about icebergs. The crew received at least 6 messages, telling them to be careful. But the ship did not slow down. At 11:40 p.m., a crew member named Frederick Fleet was watching from the lookout post. Suddenly, he saw something dark in the water. An iceberg! He rang the warning bell and shouted, "Iceberg, right ahead!" The crew tried to turn the ship, but it was too late. The iceberg scraped along the side of the Titanic, cutting it open. Water rushed in quickly. The ship could float if only 4 sections filled with water, but the iceberg damaged 5. The Titanic was going to sink. Panic and lifeboats. At first, passengers didn't believe the ship was in danger. The Titanic still looked fine. Some people even joked about the iceberg, but the crew knew the truth. Captain Edward Smith ordered everyone to get in the lifeboats. Now, do you remember what I told you earlier? There weren't enough lifeboats. The ones they had could only fit half of the passengers. Even worse, the first few boats left half empty because people didn't want to leave the unsinkable ship. In third class, it was even worse. Many families were trapped below deck, unable to reach the lifeboats in time. Imagine the panic, people running, shouting, trying to find their loved ones. By 2 a.m., the front of the Titanic was completely underwater. The back of the ship rose into the air, and people held on to anything they could. At 2:18 a.m., the Titanic broke in half. The front part sank immediately, and the back stood straight up before it finally disappeared under the water. More than 1,500 people were left in the freezing ocean. Within 15 minutes, most of them had died from the cold. The survivors. Only 706 people survived. They were in the lifeboats, waiting in the dark and freezing cold. Hours later, a ship called the Carpathia arrived to rescue them. The world was shocked when the news spread. How could the Titanic, the strongest ship ever built, have sunk so easily? After the disaster, new safety rules were made. Ships now had to carry enough lifeboats for everyone, and an ice patrol was created to watch for icebergs. In 1985, scientists found the Titanic at the bottom of the ocean. It was broken, covered in rust, but still there, deep under the sea.
Final thoughts. So, my friends,
The Titanic was more than just a ship. It was a lesson about human pride, about trusting safety, and about how small mistakes can lead to big disasters. If you were on the Titanic that night, what would you have done? Thank you for listening. May we never forget the people who lost their lives on that night. This version is